Welcome to the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Lori Rivers, and I am here to help you with some inspiration, to help you with your aspirations. And seriously, this is my 555th millionth take on this podcast because I've had to keep re-recording. So I am just going to do this one and call it a wrap. So if you hear Malcolm grooming or growling or barking, or you hear wild elephants running above me, or people saying goodbye to their nanas outside, we're just going to deal with it because we got to get this podcast out. We are talking about a couple of things in this podcast. Number one, we're talking about why I'm not talking about Will Smith. We're going to talk about the energies up on deck right now, which will include part of what made or may have contributed to that whole situation at the Oscars. And I'm only saying it to correct the shitty astrology. Or the incorrect assumptions. I'll walk back my statement. I'll just be like everybody in Hollywood. I'm so sorry. I've said something impolite. And then we're going to talk about April and the astrology of April. Of course, in between all of that, we're going to do some fabulous patron shout outs. Because of patrons, we have this podcast. So a big shout out to all of my patrons. And as always, I give a shout out to our newest patrons here on the podcast. If you haven't heard yourself in a while, it doesn't mean you aren't loved and valued. Every once in a while, I do a whole long read through. That isn't happening today, but I do value each and every one of you, and I want to thank you for contributing so beautifully to making the Awake Space Astrology Podcast happen. What else is going to happen in this episode is I'm going to talk about the mystery school a little bit more because we're getting closer and closer. The design team is working on things as we speak, and I am hurriedly finishing up content to go on the inside, and we'll talk about how that's going to roll out at the end of the podcast. So, without further ado, let's talk about why I'm not talking about Will Smith. But first, some chimey music. So I have no commentary on what might have caused the Chris Rock, Will Smith altercation. It's not my place to talk about it. You want to know what people's opinions are. I refer you to Black creators. I'm not going there. It's not my place. Regardless of your feelings about either person or what happened, it's just not my place to give any kind of commentary about it. Of course, I went and I looked at Will Smith's chart and I saw the astrology therein. Now, I'm still going to hold with my ethics on, it's not my place to talk about it, but I want to correct a few things. Mercury in Aries wasn't the main culprit. The moon in Aquarius was conjuncting Mars in Aquarius, and that was aspecting some of Will's Libra placements. And that is more than likely some of the impulsivity that happened. There was still some restraint that happened as well, at least to my Mars and Sag's opinion. But that's the most I'm really going to say about it, just because people are kind of making some astrological conjecture that isn't necessarily accurate. Aries can be very feisty energy, but as much as we attribute the god of war to Aries, and I know that's the traditional viewpoint, and it can be that kind of impulsivity. It can be impulsive aggression. It can be highly opinionated, etc. It's probably not what was at the root cause of the slap. I think that was really more the moon in Aquarius conjunct the Mars in Aquarius than anything else, because it was just kind of out there. So that's all I'm going to say about it. But I will talk about why I'm not talking about it. And again, there are lots of Black creators who are talking about this, who hold various opinions. It's their voices I want to refer you to, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube or wherever you go for news. It's really not my place to talk about it. I'm a big fan of hand over the mic. And so there you go. My other reason is I couldn't care less about the entertainment industry in general. Yes, I make things for people to consume, but I'm not really part of that industry. I'm not, obviously I'm not in SAG. I'm not in any of the guilds. I'm none of that. I talk and some people listen. I write and some people read it. I teach and some people take my classes. I'm always about helping people aspire to be aligned into their best selves. We're just going to roll with this. You get the bloopers right along with the podcast. I'm not going to re-record this. This is the last shot, Lori. This is what happens when the moon is void of course in your third house. You know you're not going to get the sucker recorded without incident. Why don't we talk about void of course for a second? Quick astrology lesson. People act like void of course moons are like the end of the world, and they happen with great regularity because all that means is, when it comes to void of course, is that a planet is not making any applying aspects. Okay, applying means it's on the approach. It is moving towards. So it's in an active, moving towards energy. Doesn't mean there are no planets aspecting. It just means there's nothing. It's not moving towards anything else. We have a lot of void of course planets right now. We do. It's not just the moon that can be void of course. None of this is the end of the freaking world. Okay. It just means when the moon is void of course, it just means things can be a little wibbly wobbly. And that's it. Some people take it like way over the top, and that includes some astrologers. I find that with a little bit of perseverance and the willingness to just roll with bloopers involved in your recording, when the moon is in your third house, just deal with it when it's void, of course. So here we go. So all of my Living by Luna peeps, take note. Living by Luna is an applied observational astrology class that I teach where people watch the lunar transits comparatively to their natal charts and journal along in my signature process that helps them come to new awarenesses about their responsiveness versus their reactivity. We're all going to need that a lot more as we go along. There Malcolm gives a shake. Thanks, buddy. He's probably going to start heavy breathing under the door since he's walking that direction, just to give you a play-by-play on my dog's life. We're just going to roll with that. We're just going to roll with that. So I'm not talking about the Oscars because it's for the entertainment industry. And I realize other people get really invested. Just like people get invested in the royal family. I don't understand that either. There's a lot of other things we could be investing our time and energy into. I consider a lot of this just glamour. And glamour is illusory magic. And just like all magic, it isn't honestly as bippity-boppity-boo as you might think. It's all down to perceptions and mental training. And so there's all kinds of glamour, whether you're using, there's the Malcolm. Those are inside barks. Thank you for the inside bark. Come back over. Thank you, buddy. Good inside bark. Thank you. Yes, my dog is trained with inside barks. Just saying, that's probably from Molly. But Molly is a mod. But anyway, glamour can be used with technology. We can do things with facelifts. We can actually do things with mental, like Jedi tricks. Believe it or not, George Lucas did not invent that entirely. He may have made up some names, but the concept of like the Jedi mind tricks is an old concept. A lot of it's out of Eastern philosophy. And a well-regulated mind or well-trained Mercury can either see through glamour or produce glamour, either to be seen as attractive and to invite people in, or to repel as well, to make yourself look unpleasing, as well as just to cloak, make yourself a non-entity. This is not the podcaster you're looking for. Move along, move along, move along. I like sound effects. But anywho, and so I kind of see the way people get invested into sports and entertainment and celebrities is a way of kind of anesthetizing themselves to the reality at hand. And I can get that, and I can understand that. When life isn't real fun in your local area, then looking outside of it is a way to kind of make time go by, and it makes things more interesting or more pleasing. But it also takes your energy away from where you're at in the here and now, and energy you could be putting into, making your reality a better space. And I'm not saying the cost of movie tickets is going to save you, or don't watch Netflix or Hulu or whatever streaming service you watch, YouTube or whatever. I'm just saying that when we invest in other people to the detriment of ourselves, then we're not contributing to making our lives better. And so, as a young person, I was a little more invested in celebrity stuff. But once, I don't know, it was sometime in my teens or 20s where I realized everybody's just people, and it's just kind of better to focus on what I need to do. Now, that could have been because my life has been a series of serious events where I had to really focus on my survival. If I wanted to be here, I had to be very focused on my next step and how I was going to approach my next step. So this is what I'm talking about. So putting your energy inside is really, really useful instead of externalizing your energy out into other people and things and events. Because when you do that, you exhaust your own inner resources. So to all of my patrons, my students, my mods, I'll often say, hey, it's time to bring your energy inside, put your attention inward. And that means, keep your energetical nose out of other people's energetical business unless you have skin in the game. If you don't have skin in the game, bring your energy back in, because you can't be of service if you are depleted. So notice, I'm not saying you shouldn't contribute or help or be involved in any way in whatever cause floats your boat. I'm saying you can't serve if your energy is scattered. And that's something that's really important. We'll be teaching more and more about that in the mystery school, okay? And we start by training our Mercury, training our mind. Mercury is your mind. Speaking of Mercury, they believe that Mercury may be full of diamonds. Its surface may be encrusted in diamonds, which I'm sure they're thinking about, oh, hey, how can we mine that? Whereas I'm like, hey, what have I been saying is one of the most important planets? Mercury, because it is how we both receive and transmit information, and how we choose our thoughts, and we do choose our thoughts. Either your thoughts are thinking you, or you're thinking your thoughts. The more you train your Mercury, the more you can wrangle and wrestle with your thoughts to be the most responsive a person you can be. Are we always going to be responsive? No. Are we going to be reactive sometimes? Yes. We're human. Just like you're not bad at manifesting if something shows up that's not pleasing to you. Okay, such as my very thin walls in this apartment, even though I asked specifically, I said, hey, I work from home. I do a lot of recording. I'd like to know, how is the sound situation in these apartments? They're like, oh, there's very little noise. It'll be okay. Yeah, whatever. I should have known better. I should have asked to, have somebody bang the walls of an apartment for me to hear. And you could say, well, Lori, I thought you were really happy with your place. In general, I actually am. It's a very cozy home. It's just kind of a pain to get my recording done. And I'm also starting to get exceptionally clear about what I would like to buy in the future. So I know my square footage. I know what I want, like physical building wise. I know I want a separate little recording studio, like a little outbuilding. I'm really clear about that. I know how much land I want to have and what I want to have on it. I know that I want, water access at the very least if it's not already on the property. And I want, I at least want the plumbing to the road, right? I want the water to the easily accessed, and electrical easily accessed. Makes things easy when it comes to putting buildings on. It doesn't necessarily have to have buildings. Buildings would be great. These are all things I'm getting super clear about being in this scenario. And we get clear when we're looking at the contrast, okay? Contrast is a nice little euphemism for things that either irritate us or bother us or, bug us, humble us, things we don't like. It can even be more harsh and be things that maybe we have a broken heart, maybe we are feeling sad, maybe we're not in a situation that feels real good to us, maybe we're on a healing journey and we're experiencing a lot of resistance. That's it, Malcolm, shake it off. That's right, shake it off, get that tail wagging. That all helps us have clarity and to give us the clue it's time to tune in to the receptivity. But you don't have to cut it short. You can go through all the range of feelings and just know that this is getting you clearer and clearer. And yes, that's Malcolm drinking water. Thanks, Malcolm, for the sound effects. I appreciate you. So we're kind of facing a very contrasty experience in human history. We've got COVID, we've got climate change, we've got various conflicts around the world that are very serious. Yes, we keep hearing about Russia, Ukraine, but there's other ones. India and Pakistan aren't doing great. Japan and China and Russia, they've got things brewing. Are we coming into World War III? I don't think so. I don't see it in the chart. I don't. Not this year, anyway. We have great potential to kind of put our focus off of a World War III type scenario. And I think we're going to have to because of climate change. And we're going to see some real climate change this April. And so we're about a week away from April. I talked about this in the Astrology of 2022 seminar that I did back in December. If you haven't watched it, make sure that you do. If you're a patron, you'll have your link in with the horoscopes. I know I've put it in before, but I'll put it out on a separate message to all patrons. So just that reminder, because patrons get to this for a year's worth of streaming for $5. And just $5, that's it. You get a whole 12 months of streaming for this, so you can look back at every single month, see what the predictions are, see how they lined up. And so April's looking pretty interesting because we have some real serious astrology going on. One of those is one of the most magical transits of our lifetimes on an individual level. On a collective level, it's also magic, but how it plays out will be very, very fascinating. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. You hear my fuzzing. Anna Malcolm, I think it's time for a break. All right, let's do some patron shout-outs. We've got Madison, Vanessa, Brittany, Nat, Salome, Julie, Posil, Mega the Wild, Kim, Alana, Trevor, Jack, Lisa, Maria Isabel, Kenna, Ashita, Sitlali, Julia, Savannah, Caddy, Val, Leah, Maria, Jennifer, Ashley, Techno Bliss, Veronica, Marissa, Albany, Ingrid, Trudy, George or Jorge, Katie, S. Leanne, Anna, Regine, Sarah, Warakanya, Tracy, Chantel, Denny, Allison, Shelby by the Shore, and Andy. Thank you so much for being our latest patrons. And let's look at the Discord. I haven't done that in a little bit since I changed the format. By the way, I am still freaking trying to get off Spotify, guys. There's a technical thing, and I'm not getting a lot of help out of any of the platforms to make it happen, and I'm running on limited time. I'm going to try to get that taken care of this week. It's not as simple as a toggle as they're trying to make it sound to be. I'm still trying to find it in Acast. So, anywho, big shout out to my mods, first of all. We have Chris, who is absolute on the server. Molly, Maleficent on the server. Casey, who's Casey on the server. We've got Shane. We've got Rita, who is RITVSE. We've got Sister Luck, who is Kathy, and we have Moo Jen, who is Jen, and she is responsible for the bot on the server. She got a tarot bot. Well, it's part of the same bot, but it has a tarot function now. All you have to do is type in ! No space, tarot in lower caps or in lowercase, and you get a tarot card when you go to the bot playground in the Discord. It's been awful salty lately, though. I tell you, we're going to have a word with that bot. It's been driving us nuts. So, yeah. That is what is there. Anna, we have been very active beyond what we're doing tarot poll wise. Lots of discussions going on. People who took the class are having some great conversations, being very helpful in the server, answering astrology classes. Shout out to Becky and Saffron and Dwabit and Gregory and Maverick. They're having a rousing conversation. Right now, it's gone from stelliums and Aquarius action and Uranus action prompted by Benjamin, and it now has devolved into discussing the dude himself, the Big Lebowski. That's how we roll. I put in some more little tips in the gardening little tip thread under prep resources, where people can just check. I put in some information about conserving water, if that's something you're concerned about with a container garden or small garden. The celebrations thread has been popping, as has the venting chamber. You know, I'm not about positive vibes only. Sometimes we have shitty days, and sometimes we know it'll get better. We do, but it's just nice to come in and say, hey, I'm having a hard time. Can you send me some love? And that happens with frequency, and there's so much support given, but we also, just to kind of create separate spaces, have a celebrations thread. And so it's really nice to see both happening in the server. I think it gives it a lot of balance, and that makes my Libra moon very, very happy. So that's what's going on for patrons. I want to talk about April. It's a very, very active month. And again, if you are a patron, at Cosmic Surfers, by the way, you have access to the year ahead. I'll make sure I get you guys that free link. But everybody else, you get it for $5. It's for a year's worth of streaming. And I did this seminar back in December. I want to kind of like... When we're looking months and months out, we can only look at themes and what's going on thematically. And then as you get closer and closer in, you start to see how those themes shape up. So let's take a look at what's going to happen in April. And I'm not going to record a separate segment for this. I just had a nice long break. So we're just going to move right along in. So April 1st is the new moon in Aries. Okay, so it's the Aries new moon. Remember, new moons happen when the sun and the moon are conjunct. This is going to be a pretty powerful event. And especially since Mercury is hanging out in Aries as well. So it's very active energy. On the 5th, we have Venus ingressing into Pisces. Jupiter is sextile the North Node on April 8th. April 10th, we have Mercury's ingress into Taurus. April 11th, the Sun is square the North Node, Saturn is square the North Node. Jupiter is conjunct Neptune on April 12th. That's forming right now, so it's very interesting energy. On April 14th, Mars ingresses into Pisces. April 16th, we have the full moon in Libra. April 18th, we have Venus conjunct Uranus. That's going to be a heck of a transit. We're running into some big financial times. April 19th, the Sun ingresses into Taurus. April 24th, we have Mercury conjunct the North Node. That's going to be a very important day. Keep that as an alarm in your calendar. There's going to be some kind of historic communications, historic event on that day. Not necessarily a bad way. It could be something good. So, Venus will be conjunct Neptune on April 27th. That is a freaking awesome day. And then April 29th, Pluto stations retrograde. Don't get your knickers in a twist. That's actually a good thing. Let's put the brakes on some of this energy. So the energy starts to slow down at the end of April. And trust me, we're all going to be looking forward to that because this month is going to speed by. And then on April 30th, we have the partial solar eclipse, which is in Taurus, and it is square Mars. When I did the presentation back in December, I gave one word for April, and that was wet. Now, it's not going to be necessarily wet everywhere because there's different climates all over the world, but we are in a climate crisis. We do have climate change. And so what we're going to have is inclement weather for wherever you live, okay? I fully expect there to be substantial storms through the Midwest and other spaces east of the Rockies, and I think we will see historic floods as well, globally, not just in the United States. I think it's going to be very difficult for farmers to get crops into the ground, mostly due to weather. We already know right now that with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's already messed up the world's wheat supply and some other crops as well. And in the United States, due to climate change and the volatile weather patterns that we're having, we're going to also have an issue with food. Now, Biden's been talking about that. I've been warning you guys for years now, and that's why I've been saying, hey, grow a little if you can. I'm not telling you, you can't. It's really hard to grow enough to feed an entire family. It's very labor intensive. But you can offset if you can. So leafy greens are easy, potatoes are easy, sweet potatoes and yams are easy. It depends on your climate. It depends on where you live. Herbs, things like mint, chives, onions, whatever you can. Zucchini tends to grow pretty vigorously in most spaces. That is a Malcolm. Hey, bud. Let's not punctuate the podcast. All right, he's coming for cuddles. It's all good. Okay, so these are all things to remember. All right, these are all things to remember. Keep these things in mind. I'm not asking you to panic. I'm asking you to be mindful and aware. Use that Mercury, problem solve, come in for support and solutions. Just worrying about things does not help. And I know what it's like to have anxiety. I've been there. I had it off the charts at one point in my life. And so all of the things I teach because I needed to learn them myself. I never pretend to be a paragon of virtue. I think that's ridiculous, and I don't think any of us need to aspire to being a paragon of virtue. We're not here to be perfect. But I can say I am a great example of somebody who has done a lot of work on themselves to overcome trauma and trauma responses. And so one of the things that is not going to help is telling yourself stories of doom and gloom. Telling yourself stories of capability and capacity is going to help you move forward. And that's some of the training that's going to happen in the mystery school. The base curriculum is a way to train that Mercury, okay? So I talk about it a lot. I say, train your Mercury. Well, I devised a process to help you train your Mercury. It's not about me giving you new programs to input into yourself. You don't need new indoctrination processes from someone else. You need to know how to unpack the indoctrination of a lifetime, and not just from family or church or what have you, but just society in general. We have, thousands of years of programming to unpack. And by the way, we're always unpacking it. You're never ever done. It's an ongoing process. But the process I created helps you align into who you really are, into your birth chart effectively. It is not necessarily upfront astrology, okay? It is applied astrology in terms that help you self-actualize. In that I took some really big metaphysical concepts and some really big scientific concepts, and I boiled them down into a framework that helps you align into your authentic self very naturally without too many triggers, okay? We don't automatically go in and say, hey, there's a program, let's disarm it. It's not how it happens. It's through a reflection process, okay? So you're going to reflect, you're going to go through a discovery process in a group support that helps you communicate and collaborate and play at a very highly effective level, and it works. I've got lots of years into this, lots of case studies. This is what I can get my doctorate in, and this time I don't have to hide the metaphysics, which is pretty cool. That's more exciting to me than anything else, because to create this process originally, I had to learn how to communicate the very metaphysical side of this in mundane language, and so you don't have to be that into the woo for this to work. Okay, it is highly effective, and I'm very proud of it. And it's really, really timely for us to get this mystery school going with alignment processes in April because of the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. As much as astrologers, for some reason in the last 15 years, have really gone at Neptune for being illusion and delusion and glamour, it's also about faith and the connection with the greater all that is. And when we're in alignment, we connect to that part of ourselves that is connected to infinite intelligence, source, God, goddess, whatever you want to call it. I always claim to be a child of Gaia. As far as I know, in any of the lives I've lived, I have always been a child of Gaia, of this great planet. We are living on a small, living planet in a vast universe, and it is a single organism, and we are but cells that are part of it. And no, we're not a cancer. We don't have to be anyway. And it is time for us to align into our nature and try to stop making ourselves what we aren't, but rather cultivate who we really are. And hopefully the Mystery School helps some of you do that. Big thanks to Rita and Vanessa, who are working on some of the development and design for this project while I get all of the insides done. So super happy about that. Let's talk about grounding through this process. Grounding is going to be necessary and also very difficult to achieve. So I'll be talking about this in depth with Cosmic Surfers in April, but let's address some of the grounding that we can do and what it is to be grounded and into our bodies and draw our energy inside of ourselves, inwards, that bringing our energy inwards in a time of great expansion consciously. because I think it's really common for people to think you need to expand your awareness. And honestly, what we need to do is internalize our awareness and understand that we are a slice of time and space crystallized into physical form. And that expanded consciousness really can fit into the body, and bringing it down into the body versus being disembodied is actually the goal. And it's also a little bit of a challenge when Jupiter and Neptune are in Pisces. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and why it's so tempting to pop into your head in the next segment. So, just why is it difficult to ground in and be embodied? Once again, Mu Jen asked a fabulous question and said, hey, can you talk about being grounded and what happens when we pop into the body and we feel all those aches and pains in the body? And sometimes those aches and pains are more than physical ailment. It can be our emotions and emotional resistance in the body. When I was in my 30s, I had every symptom that could be equated with fibromyalgia. My body hurt. It hurt to touch me. Okay. You just brushed my arm and I would say, ow. And people thought I was exaggerating. I had a hard time with water retention. It had the appearance of my thyroid being out of balance, but it never tested out of balance. All that fun stuff. And even though at that time, it was like my late 30s, I was well into my healing journey when it came to the dealing with the impact of trauma. So on an emotional and mental level and a spiritual level, I'd done a hell of a lot of work, but my body just didn't seem to want to get with the picture. And I did a ton of somatic work. I started doing a very deep somatic healing process called body electronics back in 1999. I kept up with it well into, 2014, 2015. And, so for many, many years, and I credit my getting as far as I got with that. Actually, I think I stopped around 2015. I started teaching it, but because I got to 0 clinical markers in 2012. Okay. But in about 2009, I realized that even though I'd done a vast amount of emotional and mental healing, spiritual work in depth, my physical body needed more support. And it wasn't just diet. I know a lot of people talk about diet, but diet, I wasn't eating poorly. I was eating well. I took supplements. I mineralized. I took my vitamins. I ate good food. I'm not a fast food eater. Sometimes you guys see me on live streams snacking on a sweet or cookie, but it's honestly very rare and often reserved for live streams. And I never was a big junk food eater. So it didn't make sense. So I managed to find, somehow the universe sent me an amazing 5 elements acupuncturist to my little town in Washington State where I lived. And I decided to try that. I thought, after a lifetime of cortisol poisoning, adrenaline rushes, having trauma responses in the body, I probably need to do more than a detox tea. I probably need some physical support. And so I worked with my acupuncturist very closely for several years between like 2009 and 2011. So it paralleled, the physical support paralleled the emotional mental support. And sure enough, between the acupuncture, acupressure, and the other traditional Chinese medicine, it actually helped me bring my entire system into balance. And so it's something I still do today. I'll go get acupressure or acupuncture, massage, work with the lymphatic draining, make sure that I am cleansing my body as much as I am working on my emotional, mental self. Because even once you get to 0 clinical markers, which is well-being, okay, mental and emotional well-being, it doesn't mean you don't have maintenance to do. You don't just go, okay, that's it, I quit. I'm not going to do any more work. There's always more to unfold, but the big part of the healing journey is completed. And it's not because I'm special. It's not because I'm anointed by God or a goddess. I believe we all are. We're all blessed beings, whether we recognize that about ourselves or not. It's because as human beings, we are really designed to heal. We really are. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the mental and emotional side. Obviously, there's physical things that can be more or less treatable, and some things that aren't, okay? It's like, I always love it when people try to explain to me how I might be able to heal my left eye. I probably can't, just because of the structural nature of it. I'm okay with it. I bring it up because other people bring it up, but I'm okay. I really am. I've made peace with it. And honestly, me having crappy eyesight most of my life has given me an extraordinary range of perceptions that I think are due to the fact I am not bound by perfect vision and sucked into the illusory reality that we face on a daily basis, which is Saturn. All those structures, and this is how the world works, and blah. It's a table. It must be a table. Where could be a fort. If I crawled underneath it and I put some blankies, I could hide under there. Right? I'm just teasing. So, careful how you talk to people about what's going on with their bodies, because, everybody's got a journey, and your suggestions might sound helpful to you. They're not always helpful to the other person. I find that it's just really preferential not to talk to people about their physical challenges, because you don't know what they know or don't know. Believe it or not, if you've got a physical challenge, you've probably done a fair amount of research and fair amount of work. So on behalf of people with physical challenges everywhere, please don't give us suggestions. And another one would be like, I could give a great example. This has nothing to do with my physical body. But when I lived on Camino Island years and years ago, like before 2008, I was trying to run my business. It was an online business. And where I lived on that island, the internet companies would not bring DSL cables. And so all you had was really bad dial-up. And I mean really bad 1996, 97 speeds. And how I managed to accomplish anything on that dial-up, I don't know. But every time I would talk about it with somebody, they'd be like, well, did you call Spectrum? Did you call this one? Did you call that one? I'm like, yes, I have. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried satellite? And I was like, no. I have an internet business. I never would have called or researched anything in my entire life. Of course, I didn't respond that way. That was in my head, okay? That's how it feels when people are like, hey, did you think about having an eye transplant? Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Maybe I keep up with the science as much as possible so I can talk to a doctor about it. I don't know. So boundaries are a thing, and those are a thing that are going to get crossed in April, not just with me, but with other people. So we've got just such really interesting energy in April with this energy. So watch your boundaries. Watch how you feel about helping your other people. Sometimes that's more for you than it is for them. So check in with yourself. So what do we do when we're grounding with all this crazy energy going on? When you ground in and you have those physical impacts, okay, and maybe it is an emotional bit of resistance, one of the best things you could do is breathe into it. And again, I'm going to go through this in a lot more detail for Cosmic Surfers, but you can breathe into it. So if I feel like I have resistance in my arms, there's a lot of tension in the middle of my forearms right now on both arms. I can feel it. And I'm very body aware, right? So I can feel this. And I'm going to just touch into the points where they're a little sore. They're like acupressure points. I am not using an acupressure map. I couldn't tell you what these points were in specifics or in general. I'm just kind of feeling where that is. I write a lot. So sometimes our muscles get adhesion to the bone. So I can kind of feel where that's happened. And I was driving, so, I had to drive up near LA and back. So I can feel where I've used some of those muscles in my forearm. And I can just breathe into that and just kind of accept that it's tight. Just be like, okay, I can acknowledge that it's tight in my forearms. Yep, I can. Already I start feeling energy flow. Okay. Sometimes if you're sensitive energy, you can feel it. I've rubbed the area, so there's some circulation going on. I can feel at the very least the circulation improving because I've kind of massaged the area. And I can feel the energy flowing in my hands. I'm like, okay, I can feel that. That's nice. I can just relax a little bit into it. I can recognize it's there. Pain isn't always our enemy. Pain might show that I need to have something looked at. So if my neck is tense or it hurts because I've been sitting in a certain way or holding too much tension, it's time to switch my body posture up. Maybe take a deep breath. Yep, definitely I can feel that. Going to take a deep breath. Breathe into the area and exhale. And feel into that. You'll notice the vocal quality change because there's more relaxation, a little more resonance, a little more chest to it. See that? That's what we do. And of course, I also sat back from the mic, so I got a little quieter, so I can come back in closer to the mic and take another deep breath. And so now my voice is even more resonant, more relaxed. Feel into it. The more you go, ow, 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 ooh, shallow breath, right? You do that, you're tensing up, you're resisting the resistance pattern. It's just giving you a feedback loop, so you want to breathe into it. Just kind of acknowledge that it's there. Like, ooh, I can feel that. That's a little tender. I can accept that it's tender. If you can just accept what is, you're not condoning the tenderness. You could just say, I'm acknowledging that it's there. Okay? Because if you resist it, it's just going to intensify. Okay? So that's something you can do. Sometimes when we become aware of things in the world, just the shocking nature of the conflicts, the shocking nature of the reality, the shocking nature that systems are not necessarily designed for your best interests or designed for the interests of the system, right? That can be emotionally painful or mentally painful. If you just take a deep breath and you'd be like, okay, I can acknowledge that this awareness has been a really sharp one. I feel really raw. I can acknowledge that. That calms you, okay? This helps take the edge off of things. Remember, I'm never telling you to be toxically positive. I think that's ridiculous. But likewise, it's also very toxic to be in a full-blown panic all the time or to constantly tell a narrative that disempowers you. You can come to a neutral space of where, yeah, I'm aware of these things in the world and my response to them is very intense, and I can feel that intensity, and I feel it in my body, and I recognize that I kind of feel a little small. I kind of feel a little powerless in this moment. And I would rather at least acknowledge that there's something I can do, even in a small way. And I'm not sure where my capabilities lie, but I think I can find out. That's a neutral space, okay? Because it does the world no good if you're so overwhelmed by everything that you're paralyzed or you're not capable of taking care of yourself or anything in the immediate surroundings also. And it certainly benefits anything that wants to be oppressive. And so by just kind of breathing in and acknowledging your capabilities, your awarenesses, and just acknowledging where you're at. It's okay to just acknowledge where you're at. And I know I keep saying this almost every episode these days, but luxuriating in the negative is like taking a bath in toxic goo. It's as bad as the toxic positivity of pretending everything is okay when it's not okay. We don't want to do either one. We want to come to a lovely neutral space And that means whatever comes up, we can acknowledge it, recognize it. We can even thank it. If there's a little bit of panic coming up, you can thank it. Hey, at one point you served to protect me, and I can really appreciate you. And at some point, I may need this panic. So I would just like you to know I don't need you right now. But if I ever need this kind of adrenaline rush, or I ever need this cortisol, I will fully appreciate that it's there. I know that sounds kind of silly, but talking to yourself like this really can help. So I hope this helps in some measure. Grounding is going to be exceptionally tricky through April with all of the Pisces energy. It maybe isn't time to ground. It may be time to open our awareness in and bring more of our soul self into the body, our source self into the body. Our inner being needs to kind of plug into the ground, and we can do that in different meditative states. I really don't suggest doing any kind of substance during April, whether it's hallucinogens. I would be even careful with anything with THC. Anything that keeps you really wide open, it's going to make you beyond floaty. And I know a lot of people like that, but it's not spiritually necessary to elevate your consciousness. It's just not, especially if you were born after about 1963. You really don't need these kinds of substances. You really do have everything you need to open your own mind and build your connections to the all that is. You really, really do. You don't need to chisel away at it. Even if you have Neptune and Capricorn, you really don't. If you choose to, that's up to you. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying it's not as necessary as some of the narratives kind of make it out to be. You really can open your mind and open your awareness to the all that is through meditation, through guided visualizations. I'm not a big fan of people who don't come from South America, specifically the part of South America where ayahuasca comes from, doing ayahuasca. It is a cultural practice. You don't have the DNA for it. You don't even have the cultural training for it. So, you want to do it, have at it. But I think culturally appropriating very specific ceremonial magics, I don't know. It's just not, I'm just not a fan. And you'd be like, but I had a past life. Yeah, but you're in this life right now. So I had past lives in lots of different cultures. And it's intellectually fascinating. But in this lifetime, I chose to be, for whatever reason, I still don't quite get the whole reason, but it was to be a cis white female. That's what I chose in this lifetime. Okay, and all of those experiences that go along with it. And it doesn't matter how many times I've been a dude. It doesn't matter how many times I've been a priest of whatever religion. It doesn't matter how many times I was a general or a warlord. It doesn't matter how many times I was a healer from a specific culture. This lifetime, I'm here right now. And so I kind of run in the realm of spiritual humanism. I'm very much a Gaia philosopher and a progressive evolutionary astrologer. I believe every human is sacred. I don't always understand why they do what they do. I'm not here to judge anybody's soul process. I'm not here to condemn anybody. Also, on a very human level, I don't give people moral passes either. We all have our own walks and our own understandings, but I do warn against substance use in April, especially when it comes to hallucinogens of any kind. I would not do it. You ain't gonna need it, okay? If you can tune in at all, just a modicum of tune in, you will have vastly superior experiences organically. And it would be really cool to hear of people's experiences who have chosen to meditate their way to that awareness or use creative visualization for that awareness. I just don't see the need to use substances to open up our consciousness. I know Timothy Leary was all excited about it, but also remember that the CIA used LSD to disempower a generation, and other drugs as well. The FBI did as well. And so, I know they've been incorporated in the spiritual movement. They have been forever, even when I was a young person. And I watch them not necessarily help people's processes. And we could do this mentally on our own. So if you want to do it, it's your jam, man. But I really caution against it through the month of April. Also, if you live anywhere near a river or a floodplain, do make sure you've got sandbags. Do make sure you have physical preparedness. Just be calm about it, but just be ready. Pacific Northwest, Midwest, Upper Midwest, parts of the South. Be very, very aware that April is going to be very, very wet. And with that, speaking of Pisces energy, I am going to write the Pisces moon forecast for Astro Adventures and Up right now because the moon is about ready to ingress into Pisces, and you guys need your forecasts. I'm Lori Rivers. It's always a pleasure to speak with you here on the podcast. I look forward to seeing you on Patreon, in the Discord. We just had coffee with Lori. It was pretty cool last week. Oh, that reminds me. I need to get that out to everybody as well. So without further ado, I'm going to end this podcast, and I will talk at you next time here at the Awake Space Astrology Podcast.